Welcome to Driven, the Unscripted Success podcast, with your hosts, Mike Menino and Nariman Hamden, bringing you insights and stories on achieving personal, professional, and financial success.
Hi, everybody. This is Michael Menino, and welcome to Driven, Unscripted Success podcast. Today on the podcast, we're interviewing professionals who share their experience with you, the audience, and how they got to where they're at today. And zooming from the beautiful island of Palm Desert, we have Tony DeMaio. How you doing, young man?
Hey, Michael, how are you? Thank you for having me on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate that. Tony was a professional football coach for a period of time, and also now he's working with Helping Heroes USA, where they help veterans with suicide prevention. Is that correct?
Yeah, the space that we work in is suicide prevention, and we work with veterans, first responders, law enforcement.
Oh, everybody.
And their families. Well, it runs on, one of the things that's shocking is that there is a death by suicide every 11 minutes. It's just amazing. We lose about 22 veterans a day. The numbers are staggering. And just in that space alone, between the veterans, first responders, but there's other industries. Construction industry has a high rate of suicide. Healthcare and medical field, and also entertainment. So what we're finding is as we roll this out, we're getting a broader throw than just veterans. But veterans and first responders, law enforcement, they have some special things that happen to them that they're confronted with, a lot of atrocity that haunts them that they just can't shake. So that's part of our mission and working with the families. I got started in this back in about 2015. I was a consultant to a group called Project Hero, and we did cycling events for veterans. We'd take 150, 200 veterans in these bicycles. We'd ride from like San Antonio, Texas to Houston, Jacksonville, Florida, Atlanta. We'd ride these legs. They'd be like 1,000 miles, and we'd do it maybe over 6 days. And the whole purpose of that was to be able to get veterans to get camaraderie, to be able to have something that gets them out of isolation. So when we look at the suicide, I'll call it the suicide spectrum, what happens is people get isolated, they withdraw. And from there, then comes depression. Depression then brings drugs and alcohol abuse, and then death by suicide. So our mission is to catch people that are in that isolation, depression, drugs and alcohol. And what we do is we throw a broad net here to families and people. We do our symposiums is to educate people to identify who's at risk. And we help them, we bring out what some of the risk factors are. So the first phase is to be able to identify. And so some of the things that are risk factors is number one, you have PTSD and you have TBI, which is traumatic brain injury. And that can be caused by like concussions, that can be caused by explosions. And when they have that tends to slow down your whole process. It deals with your memory. You have a lot of memory loss, and that brings a lot of frustration, depression, because you can't function at a high level that you used to. And so we talk to family members about how to work with somebody and how to identify that. So, there's financial drivers. There's people that are under a lot of stress because of financial problems. We find there's multiple factors. I'll give you an example. A lot of guys that have been deployed, they come back, and then they have a hard time fitting in or getting a job. They end up getting divorced. Then they end up in a child custody battle. It just keeps piling on and piling on. And so to be able to identify that somebody's going through that. So that's, number one is to identify. Number two is then how do you enter into a conversation? How do you bring that up? And the overall thing and the most important thing is to not be judgmental. If somebody's suffering, and it's just to approach them and ask them and say, I noticed, maybe you're just not feeling well. What's going on? And don't be judgmental and say, hey, you're sick. What's happening? There's people that are confrontive, and that just doesn't work. There's also a stigma when people say, well, I don't want to bring it up because then they'll maybe start thinking about suicide. Well, that doesn't happen. Somebody doesn't go from never thinking about suicide that you ask them and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, okay, I'm going to, death by suicide. So um, to approach it and approach it in a non-judgmental, just a conversational. And we have, in my book, I have a book coming out. It's called Silent Battle. And in our symposiums, we actually go through some opening sentence kind of openers, things to talk about. We talk about if you're going to start a conversation with somebody, make sure you start it and don't go to a restaurant. Go someplace where it's quiet, where you're not going to be interrupted. There's not going to be people around, just get one-on-one. And the whole thing is the fact that you care about that person, whether it's a friend or a loved one, you're reaching out, maybe you're on the phone. I have a lot of times that people ask me, say, well, I've got somebody there like 4 states away. How do I deal with that? And it's that phone call, talking to them. And then, so the first phase is identifying people at risk. Second phase is engaging in some conversation. The third is to look at, do I need to get help? Can I refer them out? You may be a person that you look at it and say, I've got a family member and I think they're at risk. I really think they're thinking about, death by suicide, but you may not be the right one to work with them. So possibly you can get somebody else involved. Possibly you can get a professional involved. With veterans, there's 12,000 American Legion posts around the country. And if you call up a post and say, look, I've got, my dad is a veteran and I think he's, thinking about suicide. Do you have somebody there? And they're like, yeah, we'll reach out. If it's a first responder, a fireman, if you go to a local fire station, if you don't find a local place, there's suicide hotline, which is 988. But if you're looking for somebody on a local basis that might be able to help you, I mean, there's folks out there, there's organizations that'll help. So that's what we encourage. We encourage you to be able to take in and to just have your radar up. Notice that, maybe somebody really is depressed and what's happening, what's going on with that. The other thing is that, especially in the veteran, first responder, law enforcement space, the majority of suicides, a higher percentage of death by suicides with firearms involved. And if you have somebody that has a firearm, if there's a way that you can secure that, whether put that into a vault someplace, maybe they can give it to a friend, hold for a while. These are topics, these are discussions that go on. They go on all the time. They're real. And part of the problem is that people don't have the skills. So, we talk about, from my old coaching days, we talk about, talent and skills. Well, you might not have the talent, but you can always learn skills. So what we're doing is we're teaching you skills on how to work with people that are at risk. And there's also, there's some statistics out there that 85% of the people that have thought about suicide, if somebody gets involved with them, they're able to stop that process of suicide. So there's a high success rate with people being involved and talking to people at risk. So part of our mission is to create what we call support angels, to go into a community and get people just to be aware that there's folks out there that are at risk. I live in I just barely got in, but I live in a 55 plus community. So, but I have a service dog and I walk them an hour and a half every morning, and I'll have folks come up to me and start conversations. And I realize that, I might be the only person to talk to you for 3 or 4 days, for maybe a week. And I have some people now that I see every morning, and they kind of schedule their walk, and I talk to them. Early on, I just kind of would blow those people off. I'd just be like, I'm busy, I'm getting someplace. But now I realize I learned this working with my dad. My mom died my dad was 90, my mom died 20 years before that. And my dad lived alone for 20 years. And every Wednesday he would take his car to the car wash. Every Thursday he'd go to the bank. He was looking for excuses to get out of the house. And when I go visit him, it might have been a week since I talked to him. So there's people out there that we're just encouraging folks, get your radar up, see what's going on for people. And then we have skills that we can help you to identify and to get a conversation going and maybe refer them out.
Good. No, that's awesome. I mean, those are a lot of great tips you have. What what do you guys do? How does somebody get in touch with you? I like that 988. So if you just search 988 on your phone, that's a suicide prevention line, or is that you guys, or
No,
who's that with?
that's a national suicide prevention line. If you punch one, it'll take you right to the veteran people that work with veterans. In our world, our website it's helpingheroesusa.org. And
Okay.
if you go there, our symposiums are no charge. We have sponsors, so we don't want anybody to have a financial barrier, to getting help, because sometimes it is just tremendous financial stress. People will say things like, "I don't see a way out.
Hmm.
There's no solution to this. I'm just
Hmm.
I'm trapped." And those
Hmm.
are indications. Uh, one of the example I always give is that we're out cycling on Saturdays. We cycle, 65, 70 miles. We come back, load our bikes in the car. And one of the guys said, "Hey, how about if I take you guys to lunch?" And there's about 60 guys there. And he says, "Yeah, I just want to take everybody to lunch today." And I go, "Well, no, and he says, "Well, this might be the last time we get together." Well, now all of a sudden we've got 5 or 6 guys going to have lunch because I realize that's a sign. It's a sign that people start saying goodbyes to people. Another sign is people will start giving away their possessions.
Hmm.
I have a story where a highly decorated law enforcement captain, all of a sudden his wife noticed that he was giving away a lot of his awards and memorabilia. And so her radar was up and she was like, "Wait a minute, this isn't right." People that all of a sudden start to get their financial areas,
House in order.
Yep, yep. And so again, just by us talking about it, getting out there, guys like you giving us a platform to share this message, just so somebody, the thing we want to avoid the most, the worst thing is somebody says, "I had no idea. I had no idea they were going to do this."
Hmm.
And
You
that,
hear that a lot.
yeah, and that person suffers because, I mean, that'll last a lifetime of them thinking, "If I had only known." So our mission is to get rid of that, to say, "Listen, we're going to give you, you may not be the one, but if you understand that there's a person at risk, there's a way you get help."
Hmm.
So the book that I've written, it's 9 chapters, and it's really a how-to. It's a book
There you
that,
go.
yeah, if you have somebody that's at risk, you know about it, your family, sometimes it's difficult for a family. You're close to somebody, you don't want to create a combative situation. And by not being judgmental and being compassionate about it, you can avoid that. Um, very, very few times, 1 out of 100, I've ever heard, "You don't understand, you weren't there." That, and if
That's a pretty common statement for people that are considering suicide.
it's not, I've never had somebody say to me that. They've never, I'll tell you a story. So when I started in this business, I started riding and cycling, I'm not a veteran. And I was
Hmm.
very apprehensive that guys were going to not want to talk to me, not want to communicate because I wasn't a veteran. But what I found is that they were happy to have somebody there that was looking to support them. They didn't care. And the other reason why I don't care is because I'm not telling my story, I'm listening to your story.
Hmm.
So the stories that you have, I don't need to have been there. I mean, you tell me
Right.
about an atrocity, and believe me, I've heard some things that'll just turn your stomach. They're just atrocities. But I don't need to be there. I just need to
Hmm.
listen and not be
Right.
judgmental. And I like to get that message out because there's people out there that one of their things that they don't want to talk to somebody is they go, "Well, I'm not a veteran. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a firefighter." It doesn't matter. They just want to talk. They want to share their story. That's the best therapy for them, is to be able to share it in a safe, non-judgmental environment.
Well, what about the veterans that, there's some that, how do I explain this? The special forces are sworn not to say anything about what happened and what they did.
Yeah, well, you've got to get peer to peer at that point, and you get them in a comfort zone. At that point, there's professional help, and we work with a network of therapists that specialize in guys with PTSD. And so, again, my one of my points, one of the things we coach is like, you don't have to take the laboring oar, so to speak, that you're the person that's going to save this person's life. If you can if you can identify that and maybe talk to them and then help them get help. You might not be the right person, but you might be able to find somebody that that is the right person. And it's easy. There's a lot of people out there. One of the things I'm amazed at is the amount of people that are willing to support what we're doing.
Well, it's a noble cause. I'm surprised not everybody wants to do it.
Yeah, well, it's sort of it's an interesting space. We want to make sure that when we do a workshop, symposium, whatever it is, we don't leave people on a downer. We want to give them hope. There's hope that by learning these skills, there's hope. If you're in depression, then how do I deal with depression? And so we give ways to deal with depression to help them get out of depression. And we want people to come out of our symposium and have lost a lot of the fear they have in approaching somebody. If somebody's thinking about suicide, is to maybe giving them some ideas on how they can reach out or skills. This isolation problem, we have groups that are out there, like, it can be as small as every Tuesday morning having coffee at McDonald's with 5 or 10 guys, and it's something they look forward to, and they get out. We've done things like golf clinics where we get guys that are vets or first responders. They haven't golfed. We take them to a golf course. We get the teaching pro to come out there, give them clubs to use, putt, chip, driving range. If they want to golf, they can golf. We've also done golf tournaments and the cycling events, pickleball. There's a lot of activities. The good thing about activities, it gets the endorphins going, and it's a way to get out of depression. So if you can get somebody involved in anything, even walking, that's great. If they're not in that condition, I can't tell you how many groups that are out there and people hook up in. They're doing breakfast, they're doing lunches together, they're whatever it is to get out. And that's what we encourage. We just encourage that kind of environment.
We know exercise for a fact. Exercise helps out mental. Someone had a conversation with a doctor one time, and I said I heard the craziest stat in the world. It was 90% of prescriptions given in the United States can be taken away by diet and exercise.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he looked down, he looked back up, and he goes, including psychotropic. And I didn't even think about it, depression medication. And I didn't even think about it. I just thought it was physical RX stuff. And I go, yeah, even anything with an RX in front of it, even if it's psychotropic. And he said, I think that number's low. And 90%, I was just like, wow, blown away what diet and exercise can do.
I was the chairman of the Healthy American Campaign, and there was one research study came out and said 70% of the diseases are lifestyle induced.
70%? That's a new one that I don't like.
Yeah. Well, you have smoking, you have obesity, you just have no activity. You have people that have
what do you think's worse, like smoking, drinking, or inactivity? Very good question, isn't it? I think they're all, the two are equal to the one.
Yeah, smoking is the research is out. Smoking is so bad, and secondhand smoke is just so bad. It's sort of like saying, what would you rather be shot with, a shotgun or or
a sniper rifle? That's a good point. I like that. Yeah, would you rather get shot with?
So just encourage people to get out, and to move. We're involved in some research programs with some universities that actually had done studies on how cycling could help mitigate the severity and the frequency of PTSD attacks.
That's cool.
It's not going to cure them, but it's going to reduce them. And there's ways that they charted them. And so the episodes weren't so severe and the frequency wasn't as much. So that's one of the things that, all of this, just creating awareness, being around it, having people have an outlet, where to go, understanding where they can get help if that's what they need. I think on a broad scale, that's our niche. A lot of money has been placed on research, and I think research is okay, but it doesn't always trickle down. So they're studying the brain, and they're just doing a lot of medical research on suicide. But the reality is that when it comes right down to it, it's going to be the reason that somebody's going to, I've got a business partner actually that sat there with a gun, sat on the edge of the bed with a gun in his hand, and finally what stopped him was just his daughter and the thought of his daughter. He's here, his daughter, and the thought of that just stopped him. There's a lot of stories like that. We actually have a guy in our network that actually did. shoot himself in the head and survived, and came to the realization that, wow, I need to do something. So he's proactive. He's one of these guys that's going around and organizing these coffee clubs. So there's a lot of good stuff going on out there. It's just that we don't see the approach. So from my viewpoint, the approach that's been taken, or the government support, hasn't reduced suicide, right? So, there's only one fair way to judge things, that's based on results. So if everything we're doing, we still have an increase, and we're seeing like the suicide amongst women now has increased 4% over the last 2 years.
Wow.
So we have an increase.
That's a problem.
Yeah. We look at, what's happening with youth, and youth is now becoming a problem, but there's a lot of bullying going on. And, they're getting cyberbullied. And so we're seeing increases there. So making people aware, making parents aware, what's your kid doing? What's on the net? Do they need help? In the senior section, we're seeing chronic pain as a driver.
Chronic pain, that I could see that. I'm a little bit older too, and that I could see that as wanting to finish this task.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. But doctors don't want to prescribe pain medication.
Well, there's a cycle there of being afraid that somebody's going to get addiction. There's a big addiction factor in prescription drugs, so that's a problem.
I know. So what do you do when someone's in constant pain, where there's a simple medication that can make you feel better and you don't have to worry about the pain? Also side effects, kidney problems, and shortness of life and stuff like that. But there's that's a tough one. What do you do in those situations?
Yeah, at that point, you're not the point person. There's got to be professional help. There's got to be,
gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? So that's our thing, is to say, look,
we're not the person for you, but there is help out there.
There is help. Absolutely. That's well said. That's just the way our message goes, is that you don't. And the other problem, there's a problem with that, is that, let's say you're a caregiver, you're working with somebody that's thinking about death by suicide, and they do commit suicide. That person that becomes at risk, they feel like a failure. They feel a loss. So that's why we say, look, you got to get support. You got to create a network. Don't be the one where, it comes all back on you. Like, the person that's going to do this has made a decision. It's beyond, you can help, but if they make that final decision, you can't carry that the rest of your life. I run into people that have been carrying for 30 years, 40 years.
Somebody else did it. And here's one that really, this is crazy. Like there's a term, you're talking about, all branches, that officers have to deal with, and it's called death by police officer. Mm-hmm. Suicide by police officer.
Right.
So if somebody doesn't want to go on anymore, they don't want to do it themselves, they grab a knife and run at a cop, which is, for the cop, got to be the worst possible scenario.
It's tough. And, I'll tell you what happens in those scenarios is it's hard for guys to not relive that all the time.
That's my point. They have to protect themselves. They have to go home to their kids. The other person's making it impossible for them to do anything else, right, legally and morally. They're just they're making it impossible. But that's how they want to go. They don't want to do it themselves, and they know that if you go at a police officer with a gun or a weapon, that.
Yeah, there's other ways too. That's why we think the numbers are understated. For example, somebody can drive a car into a telephone pole.
There you go. Yeah.
They can drive it up. With those type of things they're actually classified a lot of times as accidents, but they're suicides. Right. And so the numbers, the bad news is the numbers are low, and that's why a lot of people think in the veteran, the 22 a day, 20 a day is really closer to 40. They think
really
a lot of times it happens, and the person, it's classified as an accident. They don't want them to lose a pension for the family. There's just a lot of reasons. So, our mission, it's real simple. I'm just a simple guy. I'm just an ex-football coach. This is simple. It's just a matter of making a lot of people aware that there's people out there that are hurting, that are at risk, and how to identify that, how to interact with them, and maybe how to get them help. I don't try to make it too difficult. Everybody can play.
Agreed. And like you said, anybody can help just by talking. They want to talk.
Yeah.
And
listening,
that's
non-judgmental listening is really the key. It's just, letting people tell their story. And when they tell their story, there's sort of a healing effect, kind of got it off your chest kind of thing. You've been carrying this around and you share it with somebody. And it's pretty interesting. What we used to do is on these cycling events, we'd be on the road for 6 days. And every night we'd have a big barbecue. So we got 150, 200 vets. And we let two or three get up every night and share their story and let all the other vets love on them and just, not judgmental, just listening, relating. And you hear some things that are just, I'll give you an example. I give us one example. I had a guy I was talking to, he was a medic and he was new. He had just been deployed and he got involved in a battle. And part of his training is that what he's supposed to do is, as you're going through a battlefield, is to assess the injuries. And part of that process, I guess, was to turn over somebody if they were face down, turn over, check on them. And he saw one guy, and the guy was totally, looked like he had bled out. So he didn't do it. He kept going. That night, he started thinking to himself, "What if he was still alive? What if I didn't?" So that just haunted him for years. He just constantly had that, what if? And the more he talked about it and got it out and got some support and got people to listen to him, he started to, feel
Let
like,
it go.
yeah, my first judgment was high probability there was so much blood that, but those are kind of decisions people are making that just, I've got some others. I mean, I've got some that I won't share. They're just too graphic that I've had over the years, guys tell me, but listening, and just getting help. If you can't be the one to help, then get somebody.
That's good advice. That's good coaching there because you're not going to like. What did you say earlier? You're not going to be the answer for all of them.
Pardon me. Say it one more time.
You're not going to be the answer for all of them.
Yeah, you're not. But if you do phase one, it's just identify somebody's at risk and maybe, touch on a little conversation, and then if you follow up and just say, "Hey, did you call this, 988? Did you talk to somebody? Did you get to the American Legion and talk to somebody?" And they're saying, "No, I got a lot of reasons." One of the guys that we work with, he actually physically goes to veterans that he says have gotten so deep in the woods, and he'll go and drive them to an event. He'll go pick them up and drive them. That's his commitment. And sometimes that's what you need, is for people to get out of the house, just get away, to get into interfacing with other folks. And so that's the way his mission, his ministry, so to speak, goes. One other thing we touch on also is having faith. I mean, there's a lot of hope in God, and God's got a lot of promises for you. And you get to the point where you just don't think he's listening, or you haven't gotten an answer, but there's a promise there. And we like bereavement. So a lot of people, especially older people, have lost a loved one. Maybe they've been married 40, 50 years, and we tell them to plug into a church. We help them plug into a local church. For all churches have bereavement ministries, where there's maybe 10, 15, 20. My church is a mega church so large, we have like 5 of them going on, so you can always get into
it. What was the mega church you goes to?
I go to Shepherd of the Hills. It's in Port Ranch up there. And it's a mega church. I think we run about 12,000 people a weekend.
Nice.
And so there's churches, but even smaller churches might have a bereavement group or be able to get you. And that's where, especially for guys, typically when you think about it, the social of a couple, a lot of times it's the woman that drives the social activity. They're the ones that have the friends, they've had the relationships with kids, and, and the guy's been working all the time or he's been deployed, and he loses that partner and he's pretty much isolated. Unless he has golfing buddies or things like that, he's just kind of isolated. So to get him involved in something, and sometimes the church bereavement, something at a church is the best way to get him going. So not one size fits all. If I can help somebody, that's the truth. And having a lot of things available and understanding, knowing where to look to help that person, that's what we're coaching. That's what we're talking about.
Cool. Hey, Tony, this has been a great interview. You shared a lot of great information. Now, is that 8 or 988 or 998 is the helpline?
988.
988. Okay. If anybody would like to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
You go to helpingheroesusa.org. You can register for our events there. And again, the events are free. You can send emails to us, our staff, and we'll reach out and we answer them all. Pretty soon you'll be able to get the book there, Amazon, all those places that you buy books.
What's the name of it? So when it comes out, we're ready for it.
Yeah, it's Silent Battle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a book for family and friends that have somebody at risk.
Sounds good.
That's the way it's
Tony,
written.
Tony, thanks a lot for being on the podcast. We do appreciate it. And for everybody else, please like and subscribe. And if you need to talk to somebody, I didn't know this. This is education for me. 988 is a great number to call. And Tony is a great person to get in touch with. And we can't wait to look forward to your book, sir. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was a great interview. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Driven, the Unscripted Success Podcast. Want to share your story? Apply to be a guest at drivensuccesspodcast.com/guest.